My children, today we have gathered, not physically, but in spirit, for the great exchange of ideas. Here I must communicate with you an urgent message. Our world has devolved past the point of no return. Your life has fallen apart. You may feel lost. You may feel lonely. All is not lost. There is a solution. Together, we can fight this new and terrible reality. The world does not love you. Society is flawed. They will not accept you. My people love you. My God loves you. My children, our enemies may try to chain us to societal norms, but when we are together, we cannot be shackled. Free yourself from this flawed world. Embrace the order of my people. Together, we can finally be free. Whew, I need a breather after that one, sorry. Whew, here we go. Haven't you always wondered what it would be like to hold immeasurable power? To conduct an entire room in just seconds, to have countless bands of loyal followers by your side? No, I'm not talking about Beyonce. Today we'll be examining cults, first by dissecting the complexities of its definition, then by looking to the heavens with historical example, and finally by searching for a higher meaning with psychological explanations. Now, after hearing that little speech and being very persuaded, I'm sure the one thing you're thinking right now is, boy, oh boy, how can I become a cult leader? Well, slow your roll, bucko. Before we can get to that, we have to figure out what the word cult even means. As Webster's dictionary defines, a cult is a small religious group, not part of a larger and more accepted religion. The word cult itself comes from a Latin word meaning to worship. However, Professor Robin Clark of the University of Pennsylvania argues the word has come to denote a group with socially deviant practices and beliefs. So how did such a straightforward word come to have such a negative connotation? Well, Professor Ori Tover, also from the University of Pennsylvania, explains cult is a term used to demonize unpopular social movements. By this logic, anything you disagree with can be a cult. Personally, I think people who wear low-waisted jeans are in a cult. I mean, who thought that was a good idea? But before we jump to any conclusions about what the word truly means, let's take a look at the characteristics of what we have come to know as the cult. Doyle Paul Johnson, for the sociological analysis, names two main characteristics of cults. Firstly, they tend to arise and flourish in an unstable social environment. This could be during a national emergency or even within a small community. And secondly, cults always have a charismatic leader. Now, let's take a look at these characteristics again, but this time with some historical perspective. I'm going to be using Christianity just as an example. The Christian message began to spread during a time of instability, that's one, in Judea, when the Jewish people were suffering from Roman domination and oppression. And of course they followed their charismatic leader, Jesus Christ. That's two, in spreading his message of love and peace. Now, am I suggesting that Christianity is a cult? Of course not, but at the time of its foundation, Roman citizens likely considered it to be one. I'm simply drawing a parallel between a modern definition and a historical example to demonstrate the ambiguity of the definition. I'd argue the only difference between the two is the duration of time the movement lasts. All religions could be considered cult-like at their foundation, and by extension all cults could become religions, if allowed to exist long enough. But enough of that theoretical talk. Let's get to the good stuff. When I looked up the cult Heaven's Gate on Google, the first thing to pop up was the official Heaven's Gate website. So, naturally, I clicked on it and took everything I read to be completely truthful. Because when I see neon green text on a galaxy background, the first thing I think is scholarly. No, I'm just kidding. I nearly burned my retinas off. But don't worry, I'll summarize for you. These people believe that a higher level of being can send messengers to Earth in the form of prophets, which they call representatives, who are able to guide humans into the heavenly kingdom. Now, this alone sounds innocent enough, but when we look just below the surface, it's easy to see that it's just another doomsday cult. Marshall Applewhite, the cult's founder, or representative do, was able to convince his followers that the only way to escape utter destruction on Earth was in an alien spacecraft hidden behind the Hale-Bopp comet. A spacecraft in a comet. I shouldn't judge. Stranger things have happened. I'm passing calculus, for example. Anyway, Dew and 38 other members of Heaven's Gate drank a mixture of vodka and phenobarbital, a chemical, in hopes of traveling spiritually to a higher plane of existence. Sadly, though, this ritual just ended in their deaths. But after hearing of such a tragic event, one begins to wonder, how can a person lead a large group of people to commit such an unspeakable act? At what point do these people begin to abandon their own common sense in favor of blind faith? Mass suicide events like this don't just happen. They're the logical conclusion of an extended period of manipulation and, frankly, brainwashing. Cults are able to emerge both because of the faults of the followers and because of the manipulation of the leader. Now, anyone can fall victim to a cult leader's persuasive message, but Doyle Paul Johnson states that most of the members of the cults he studied were somewhat alienated and lacking a purpose in life. Now, this seems a bit intuitive, but it's important to know for picking out potential cult recruits. For example, the inner cult leader in me can tell that all of you are at least a little bit alienated. Oh, why? Because you decided to join speech and debate. No judgment at all. Anyway, an entry in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Psychology states that people are more susceptible to manipulation when they lack socioeconomic status and when they're not highly intelligent. So, to summarize, cults are mainly populated by people of vulnerable economic, social, and psychological status. Now, cult leaders themselves. Joe Navarro for Psychology Today studied cult leaders in great depth, including Jim Jones of Jonestown and Marshall Applewhite of Heaven's Gate. He concludes that cult leaders are pathologically narcissistic and only superficially charming. They will offer security and social acceptance to appeal to their victims' alienation and lack of purpose. And once inducted into the cult, the leaders will brainwash their followers into unquestioning obedience by stripping away at their freedoms and self-worth. However, the most powerful tool that cult leaders employ is actually an emotional connection. In fact, some leaders even bear passing resemblances to the fascist leaders of the mid-20th century. That's right, I'm talking Mussolini and Hitler. These leaders were supported by what is known as a cult of personality. This occurs when a group of people idolize a public figure so much so, they begin to believe the figure can do no wrong. They will follow the figure with blind obedience, almost as if the figure himself was a god. Today, we first took a look at the complex definition of the word cult. Then we looked to the heavens with historical example. And finally, we searched for a higher meaning with psychological explanations. Now, that's all well and good, but how can you use this information to become more powerful, a leader and speaker? Simple. Follow the example of cult leaders past. Except without all the killing and bad stuff, just use it for good. Here, I'll show you an example. My children, I have returned, and I sincerely hope you have considered my offer of love and guidance, and unity and solidarity. Use a lot of meaningless, strong words. My church arose during a time of turmoil. That turmoil being whatever you're personally going through right now. Be super vague. It could be in your family, in your mind. A pandemic, perhaps. I don't know. I'm just the prophet. Give yourself a strong name. But what I do know is that if I yell loudly enough, if I gesture wildly enough, you will stop listening to what I'm saying and start believing me. Because that's just how manipulation works. You are lost and alone. I am loud and confident and angry sounding. The time is nigh, my children. We must band together to fight this ambiguous threat I am referring to. Join the fight. Join my people. Together, we are free. So, what do you say? Will you join my cult? Thank you.